Let's talk about recasting a mortgage, which can then reduce a mortgage payment without refinancing. So let's talk about a recast. So let's establish what it is and what it isn't. A recast is when a homeowner with a mortgage wants to put down a sizable amount of money towards their principal to reduce their loan balance and then recast the mortgage. So what that means is they'll then take whatever the remaining principal is and they'll redo the calculations so that the payment goes lower to keep the current duration. So I know that sounds tough to follow, but I think an example is probably better suited here. Let's pretend Joe homeowner has a 30-year mortgage, and 7 years in, Joe gets a lotto scratch off ticket, and Joe wins 100 grand from this lotto scratch off ticket. So he's 7 years to the day, like this is a 7-year birthday on his mortgage, and he gets this 100 grand, gold mine. Good for Joe. What Joe will then do, let's pretend his mortgage balance at that time is 400 grand. Well, if that's the case, Joe's been making his normal mortgage payments for 7 years, and it's a 30-year note, so he's got 23 years left. And so now Joe's going to call up his mortgage servicer and say, hey, guess what? I'm going to put 100 grand towards my mortgage, and I would like to do a recast. So what the mortgage company will then do, or the mortgage servicer will then do, is they'll take the balance from 400 grand to 300 because he paid that thing down. Now they'll take 300, the new balance, and they'll re-amortize it over the remaining 23 years that are left on that mortgage. So his payment will go down. So that way, as Joe homeowner keeps making payments for the next 23 years, at the end of 30 years, he'll then have zero balance. So you're kind of thinking, well, I get it, but what happens if he didn't make that phone call? If Joe in this example just wrote the $100,000 check, his mortgage balance would go from 400 to 300, but his payments would stay the exact same. That's what would normally happen without doing a recast. Well, the difference is going to be, well, if Joe puts down that 100 grand check from the lotto scratch off, the mortgage, and I'm making this part up because I don't know the actual numbers, because it depends on his rate and all that other stuff. But instead of the loan paying off in 23 years, Joe may have that thing paid off in the next 17 years or 16 years or however long it takes, because by paying down that extra principal and making the same monthly payments, he would pay that loan off faster. So you would think, well, gosh, which one's better? Well, they can be, there is no better, right? Everybody's going to have different needs and circumstances in their life. And so let's talk about what that looks like. So before we get into the pros and cons and why you should or why you shouldn't and what programs are allowed, let me fill in a few more just kind of administrative pieces. To do a recast, you should not need to qualify. You don't need to send in pay stubs, tax returns, or all that other stuff. You do need to, typically, most servicers are going to require at least a $10,000 principal reduction. And by the way, you typically only get to do this one time through the life of the loan. So you can't just get 10 grand here, 10 grand there, 10 grand there. So pick wisely when you're going to do this. The cost, and again, I can't speak for every mortgage lender servicer out there. I would say between $500 and $1,000 sounds about right. So it's, again, a principal reduction. I would say make sure you're checking for any prepayment penalties. Some mortgages, very few, but typically more on investment properties, may have prepayment penalties. It says if you pay it down too aggressively, you're going to owe a penalty for doing that. So, but the most loans don't have that. It's typically more for investment properties where the prepayment penalties exist. So again, 500 to $1,000, get to do it one time. Mortgage services don't have to let you do this. Some programs, like government programs, so that would be VA, FHA, USDA, those programs do not allow you to recast. So if you have one of those programs, sorry, can't do it. They won't allow it. That kind of hits the administrative piece of the recast. Again, it takes that payment lower so that you just finish out the normal scheduled term of your loan. So when does this come into play? When would somebody do this? A really common example is if somebody's buying a brand new home and they haven't sold their current home yet. So they buy a new home, they get a mortgage, I don't know, 3 months, let's just make up an example. 3 months later, they sell old home and now they have an extra 100, 200 grand or whatever it is, and they want to put that towards their mortgage. Well, if they put it towards the mortgage and they want the lower payment, they would do a recast. If they want to put it towards a mortgage and keep the higher payment, it just means they'll accelerate it and pay that off faster. So a good example of why somebody else might recast is like maybe if, again, they buy the house and the house is a little bigger than what they really feel comfortable paying for a mortgage payment. But they know that, an attorney did this where they got a big old bonus. It was like triple their income. At the end of the year, they get this big old check and they buy the big house. And while they technically qualify for it, it's just not something they want to do. They get that big old check, they put it towards it, and they do a recast, and it saves them from refinancing. So just remember, a recast does not touch your actual interest rate. It doesn't redo your mortgage. It just redoes the payment based on the amortization that is left in the loan. So if you have questions, understand that, again, it's not something that is guaranteed. Can't happen all the time. It's a one and done typically. They can say no, but certainly just let us know if you have any questions. The only real drawback to doing it is that you will pay more interest if you keep it on that normal 30 years in my example, versus if you were to just pay off that principal and keep the payments, you'll end up paying it off quicker, which means less interest. But beyond that, I love Recast. For the right time, the right person, it can make a whole lot of sense. And if you got questions, because everybody's different, feel free to reach out to us. Check out some of the other links about recasting and other things of that nature that we have on here that apply to it. But the reality is, call us if you have questions. We're here to help, even if we didn't do your mortgage. Certainly want to make sure we take good care of them. And we appreciate you watching as always. Forward, share, subscribe, all that stuff. And remember, when you think mortgage, think Mark.